Out, close your eyes, and we do the breath of fire, panting like a dog. Take a deep breath in, hold your breath, squeeze your body really tight, and then relax. Okay, how you doing today, right, Joe?
Bad, not bad. We're on that, I like to call it like the turning point. We're at the midway point, what I'm saying? At least for me, being a teacher. We're at the midway point where the school year or my work year is at the halfway point, what I'm saying? Been doing the
Okay.
last few exams and now, starting to get that last hit into the final stretch. Yeah. But apart from that,
Okay.
yeah, not bad. Can't complain, and I won't complain.
Okay, good to
Grateful
hear.
as never.
Okay, today's topic, I'm going to turn this over mostly to you because I don't really know much about the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. Why don't you explain to our viewers what the IMF does and what's their role in both the micro and the macro economy of the world? And,
Actually, I think that's
and
a very
even develop not only first world countries but also developing countries and third world countries.
yeah. Actually, I think that's a very good question that you asked. What do they do? So what's their point? What's their function? What's their modus operandi? Or what's their mo? Well, the thing is, like what a lot of people don't know is that the International Monetary Fund (IMF) it started. If I'm not, and I don't want to misquote this, but it was either 1944 or 1945. I'm not sure. It was towards the end of the World War II or at the beginning after it had finished. And together with the World Bank, they decided to work together to try to help, especially the countries at that time who were impoverished or who had suffered a lot. I mean, even those war torn countries who were, how can I say, perpetrators or instigators of war. They opted to help out. Countries like Japan. You know, if I if I give my 2 cents, they kind of like decided to help out some of the people that they kind of like destroyed. The winners kind of destroyed. Like, okay, you know what? We screwed over your colony, your country, but yeah, we're gonna give you some help, some assistance. You know what I'm saying? But don't forget that we're the ones who helped you recover from what we destroyed you from. It was one of those kind of things. And unfortunately, unfortunately or realistically, that's one of the ideals that the World Bank and the IMF have today. Like I said, since 1944, 1945, they've been working in cahoots, and they are even located one across on the street from the other. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's Washington D.C. And basically, what the main function of the International Monetary Fund or IMF is to give or to help impoverished nations or to be that last um, lifeline to countries who are in dire straits. They've helped out numerous African nations. They helped out Asian nations also. They've even helped out Greece 3 or 4 times, if I'm not mistaken. But they're full of controversy or controversy, right? Because of their lending practices, and basically, and I think that they're globally at the moment they're quoted at maybe I think it's like 7 trillion U.S. dollars or something like that. But however, they have a lot of money, and it's basically the way of the West, particularly because most of the countries that were involved were France. Well, they were led and spearheaded by the Americans, probably second the British, the French, and a lot of other teams who were on the Allies or the Allied forces. at the end of the or during and at the end of the Second World War, and it was a way to kind of restabilize and to try to refortify um, the globalization, which was starting to pick up, really pick up. And as we know now today, me, you, a lot of people from our generation, we know that globalization, that's the only way of living now. You know what I'm saying? Our children and our grandchildren will probably know that, okay, being in contact with all parts of the world is what's normal, but until like 30 or until 30, 40 years ago, when these different aspects started to pick up, or even we talk, 1940s, 1950s, globalization, even though it was still, saying there was a lot of trade between many various countries, but not as much as there is now. Saying most countries, even warring countries, trade with each other. Some people might say, well, how's that possible? Because that's the way of life. That's the path to globalization that we chose over a century ago. And that's the path that we decided that okay, it's probably the best way to go. And one of the things is that with the IMF, particularly, okay, not including the World Bank, even though they're usually synonymous with one another, the World Bank, when they see a country, especially African country or a Western country, a developing country, third world country, really, really struggling, and even, like I said before, even in the case of Greece, which is not considered a third world country, really, really struggling, they give them that sustenance, or how can I say that bailout, as we call it in America, so fondly when we refer to civilians and not governments. So it's basically a government bailout or international bailout of countries. And that's basically what their ideal is. And later on in the talk, I hope that we get to talk about some of the other how can I say other variations of this of what we see today. Okay.
Well, let's talk
So,
about it right now. What are
exactly.
the other variations that you want to talk about?
Well, I don't know if you've heard about the China Road and Belt Initiative. Okay.
Hmm.
And I've witnessed it firsthand, both when I went to India in 2003 and two times that I went to Africa, North Africa and Northeast Africa, sorry. So we're talking about South Ethiopia, South Egypt, Ethiopia, and Kenya and South Sudan, right? And there are many other places that's doing this, where they're allowing, the Chinese to give them loans to get on their feet, because like I said, from an outside perspective, you have to consider that a lot of these African countries, okay, a lot of these dictators are not so good-willed, but even some of those who are halfly good-willed, they may say, okay, I want to bring my people out of poverty, saying we want to join the modern society, but they have to realize, they're like 600 years out of the game, son. You know what I'm saying? You can't just like join in, like, like you got like 50, you got like $50. You can't be like, yo, I'm about to get investing, you know what I'm saying? Because hedge funds and things like that. But with $50, bro, really, what can you do though? You know what I'm saying? And that's how a lot of the African countries. But the worst part is that a lot of African countries have the resources and have the if they do well, and then we can even talk about, if you want to, Ibrahim Traore, who's the prime minister, president, dictator, governor, however you want to put it. He's the leader of Burkina Faso, which is the world's 14th largest gold exporter, but it's been how can I say, a French colony for so long. They gained their independence quite some time ago, but they've still been under French control, even though they were, independent. Very differently from a lot of other places like India. Even though they received their independence from Britain, they almost immediately, started their road to independence without relying on the West. And for example, a lot of countries are asking the world, the internet, the International Monetary Fund, or the IMF, for assistance, for help, for saying, because especially when we think of times of COVID, times of any type of worldwide pandemic, or whether it's with health or mental or economical, how can we get out of this? Saying this rut, and the IMF was set there to help out these guys, providing minimal interest um, for it to be paid back over long terms, similar to what the so-called American student loan process is. American student loan process, you should know better than me. It's kind of like, okay, yeah, we'll let you pay back your loan slowly, but yeah, you're gonna be paying for the rest of your life. You know what I'm saying? And your children are probably be paying for your loans too. You know what I'm saying? So that's one of those things. And that's basically what's happening. A lot of these countries are defaulting because they're unable to pay off. You know what I'm saying? Even with the small interest rates. Okay, with the China Belt and Road Initiative, they're doing the same thing. A lot of these Chinese countries, or a lot of these Chinese government is offering loans, massive amounts of loans, to smaller and developing countries, which have or strategic um, choke points, or they may have strategic resources. We're talking about
Okay, well,
different
I
port
have a
lines.
question.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question for you then. What if these small countries, like one of these small African countries, do not pay back their loan? What are the consequences?
Well, in that case, we can look back. You know what I'm saying? We're talking about, we can look back at Haiti and the Dominican Republic. These are two countries which are located next to each other in the Caribbean, and they had two very, very similar, histories up until maybe about 150 years ago, when Haiti, they decided not to take the side, and they decided to take, French. When they got their French independence, their independence from France, they kind of said, you know what? Okay, blah blah blah. France said, okay, well, you got all of your resources there, but in order to operate, you need money. We can give you some money, but we're going to use these usury or these loan shark tactics, similar to the Medici families in Italy from the Leonardo da Vinci times, where we know that you won't be able to pay back. In fact, if we look, and you can ask any of your friends or any people, you can do a simple Google search on how different economically Haiti is from the Dominican Republic because of all of the loans that the Haiti had incurred from France, and that they hadn't been able to pay back. And that's the same thing that's kind of happening, because what's happening with the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, their BNI, Belt and Road Initiative, or BNR, yeah. So they call it BNR, I think BNR or BNRI. I'm not sure exactly what the acronym they use, but they call it Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, and they're basically saying, okay, Rwanda, you need $1 trillion. Okay, we're going to need $1,500,000,000,000. It needs to be paid back in 10 years. But, and this is where the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative is very similar to the IMF and the World Bank. And obviously, the World Bank and the IMF is one of those ideals that was conceived by the West. What I mean by that is Europe and America principally, and Canada, to try to say, okay, if you default on your loans, that's fine. Okay, we'll give you even more time to pay it back. We even lower the rates, but we're going to install, or you, during this rebuilding process, or during this renovation, or during this, development to become a first world country, you have to use American, Canadian, British, French, German, and Italian engineers. All of the,
Hmm.
group leaders have to be of these nations, and the workers, the manual workers, can be from the local area. All right.
Hmm.
So in the moment that you default, but guess what? We're going to just keep a base here in the event, what I'm saying, that you need to be protected also. But it's for your benefit. It's for your benefit that I'm keeping my base here. You know what I'm saying? And that's the same
So
thing that
do they charge for the base?
what do you
Do
mean?
they charge
Do the
do they
country charge
charge
for the
countries
base?
for that? Like
This
say the
I
military?
can't tell you. I can't tell you because I know that overall that the Americans usually, to try to keep their hands clean, they'll pay a leasing fee. For example, many of the European bases are leased. So the American government, or their NATO bases, or they're leased by the American military. But yeah, the American military pays a butt ton of money. But they don't mind. Because they have that strategic location. Um, right? And the same thing with the Chinese, Belt and Road Initiative. They're saying, hey, guess what? If you default, okay, but you know what? We're going to still keep a base here anyway. And so now it's kind of like that new age colonialism. And it hurts me to say that, unfortunately, and I don't want to say who the quote comes from originally, because I hate misquoting people. But and I've told you this many times, but it's always the words of the quote that are more important. If we are here to learn from our mistakes, how is it that history always repeats itself? You know,
Mm.
and this is only new age colonialism. Okay, I'm coming into your country. You need $100,000. Okay, I'm gonna give you $200,000. I'm gonna give you more time than you promised to pay me to pay it off. But I know you still can't pay off even that 100,000. And then when you can't pay off that 100,000, you know what? I already have people, boots on the ground. That's not that necessarily military, but boots on the ground, culturally, spiritually, religiously, et cetera, that will start to slowly integrate into your area, into your tribes, into your areas, and when you
So
can't pay back, you know what? I'm already positioned. You know what I'm
so
saying?
let's get this straight. So this is some real pimp shit here. So
It
basically,
is.
it's these Western countries beat the shit out of a smaller country, depleted them of their resources, and then say, you know what, we're going to help you get back on your feet, so we're going to loan you some money. But if you can't
Exactly.
pay the loan back, we're going to pretty much just put you back into our colony again. Mhm.
Exactly. I mean, we won't even put you into our calling again, but you have to realize that you're eternally indebted to us. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
I mean, and like I said, I'm not trying to say one country is worse than the other. In fact, a lot of the main countries, a lot of the G7, G9, and G20 countries are trying to stop this Chinese Belt and Road situation, because with a difference to the IMF and to the World Bank, the Chinese government is loaning out money to these countries, like much more money than IMF can, right? But with a higher interest rate, you know what I'm saying? And leaving them really nowhere to go, you know what I'm saying? And I mean, I hate to say, but that's capitalism at its finest, at a global, governmental level. So when we think about the IMF, it's only a precursor or actually, let's say this, it's only a tangible ideal of how humanity has become, or how humanity always been, and I think that's very sad, personally.
Okay, so then what is the solution then for some of these countries that do need money? How can we get them back on their feet without pretty much pimping them?
Okay, well, I hate to say that, I'm really, and like I said, I'm not an anarchist. I'm not what is it, a conspiracy theorist, and I think that, things usually evolve and revolve how we permit them to, what I'm saying? What's being shown to us and things like that. But one of the things that I really do like, am I going to say to you, I don't want to sound like one of these anarchists, like I said before. But when you think about Mr. Traore, Ibrahim Traore, like I said before, he's the president of Burkina Faso. Okay, and Burkina Faso, I don't know if you know, it's a very very small country, um, but it's one of those countries, like I said, that has so many resources. You know, it's so how can I say, so notable for everything that is going on. And the president that was in the 1990s, that like I said, a lot of people don't want to give Ibrahim Traore a lot of cred, because he took over the government in a military coup. Okay, because I think he was a general, or I'm not sure, but however, he took it over in a military coup. And as we know, military coups in Africa happen, like, what I'm saying, like the changing of the calendar, what I'm saying. But he's been there, and he's actually said, you know what? Again, I'm not trying to go into conspiracy theories. He's tried to go into a Gaddafi mindset, saying, you know what, world, you guys are printing money however you want. You know what I'm saying? You decide how much money to print, how much money not to print. If you print so much, it's going to be inflation, or it's not inflationary, or it's not going to be inflationary. But the gold has a finite, or the earth has a finite limit of resources, such as gold. And we have the 14th highest gold producing country. You know what? the two main countries here that are mining for gold are is Canadian, or sorry, Canadian company was bought out by the English country. So English country company. This English company and the French company. We're still considered a French colony, even though we've had our independence for quite some time. You know what? We're going to block and we're going to blockade and we're going to tear the shit out of anyone who's not from Burkina Faso, reutilizing that money because, as we know, your degree, your first degree was in business administration. The only way for the economy to work is for people to spend money, but to spend money in that same area. You understand?
Mhm.
So when you're making money, but you're exporting it to another place, that country is not making money. You understand?
Mhm.
Right? So he said, you know what? In fact, he's terrifying the shit out of these governments. He says, you know what? You can't come here. You can't come here unless you pay this tax, unless you pay this tax, unless you pay this tax. Kind of in
Mhm.
a way that might be contractually illegal. We don't know. You know what I'm saying? But that's one of those things. But I think that most of these people can really look at it as are bonding together. However, one of the biggest problems is, and I hate to say that, and I'm not going to say that it's because they're black, because I refuse to think that, you know what I'm saying? But one of the problems is because this ideal of dictatorships, empires have been so strong in the African continent for so long that all it takes is one or two or three of these African presidents to kind of, infiltrate and poison the waters, you know what I'm saying? But if all of them bonded together, like the East African Union, or was it the ANCF, which is the African National Conference Federation? I'm not sure. It's like 20 African nations that come together, kind of like the EU, like the European Union. If they bond together and they stay strong behind that, even if they have their differences, I think that they will be able to say, we will be able to dictate the world in 50, 60, 70, 100 years, But a lot of times, and I'm not saying again, I'm not saying because they are African, but I'm just saying that unfortunately, what they've seen, what they've been taught, and what they've been trained, similar to us, African Americans in America, we see the gold chains, you know what I'm saying? The Rolexes, the Audemars Piguets that cost 300,000, you know what I'm saying, dollars. The sports car that costs $1.5 million. For them also, they may say, okay, well, they got all of the guns, they got blah 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 blah. We want that. No, you should make a new want in society. And I think that that's one of the things that they've never been able to do. Even when we talked about one of your best friends, Lupe Fiasco, talked about being able to trade off slaves just for bracelets. You know what I'm saying, in the past, for bronze bracelets. You know what I'm saying, a bronze bracelet would get you like 50 slaves. What the really like a bronze slave, or you put some iron ores in the fire, pounding them shits out, and then you got a bracelet, and you can get 50 slaves for that. I'm being very, very reductive, but
But doesn't that say a lot about like the African culture, even prior to colonization and slavery, that a lot of them did have that sense of like turning on each other and even selling each other out.
everyone does. Everyone does. Even. Well, think about the European culture. When we think about all of the different, saying monarchies and families, how many brothers were killed by their brother to succeed the throne. You know what I'm saying? Or how many cousins, you know what I'm saying, infiltrated, married, and then killed that whole lineage just to make the throne. You know, like we said before, same shit, different toilet. History repeats itself. I don't know why how we can say we learn from our mistakes, but I think we learn from our mistakes is that what we learn from our mistakes or what we learn from our history is how to fuck over the world in a different way with a different mask. You know what I'm saying? I think that's the problem is that for humanity, and we've talked about this many times. I think about being able to admire your neighbor's wealth or good looks or greener grass. That's always been a thing, And as most people in the past would say, he who shouts or he who speaks loudest wins an argument. So if you come to, what I'm saying, if you come to Africa, as a European, you're like, yo, look at all this bling I got. Bling bling, bitches, bling bling. They're like, what the fuck is bling? That means nothing to me. But then you show them it, and they see how important bling is. They say, well, wait a minute, maybe I want that. But do you really? You know what I'm saying? How many times? I mean, and I know I'm probably more in tune with this than you are because I've always been, a very materialistic person, even though I'm very minimalistic, but I'm much more materialistic than you have ever been, Richard. And so, I like flashy things, and how many times I've ever seen something, I'm like, oh, I really want that. But they're like, but do I really? Can I do
Mhm.
without that? Yeah, because I don't really want that. And I never did really want that, what I'm saying? But someone kind of forced that onto you, I hate to say, excuse me. I hate to say this, but for example, I think about this when I think about, this is not a segue to I'm gonna say to a sponsor for tobacco, but recently I've been smoking. I've always smoked, that, cigarettes, and recently I've been smoking rolling tobacco, because I've kind of felt that, the fact that how, we can think about this even when we think about candy bars or things like that. You make a cigarette. You're saying to me that's how much you should smoke if you want to smoke one cigarette. You know what I'm saying? Whereas, for example, with rolling tobacco, I could decide if I want to put just 2 grains of, tobacco in there and smoke it in one puff, that's fine. If I want to smoke like a really fat, tight cigarette, rolled cigarette, then I can smoke a fat cigarette. And that's kind of like the same idea that happened, I think, with a lot of African nations. They kind of, the Europeans, the colonizers came out and said, you know what? You want this because that's cool. Look at this. Even my people think this is cool. And so if they're playing on the same team, it's easy for them to hijinks you. Like Dave Chappelle said when he went to New York and he tried to make some money on that 3 card Monte, and he realized, that the 3 guys that were doing 3 card Monte were all friends, right? And he said, I don't know if you remember that skit. I think he did,
Mhm.
not his last special, but the one before that. He said, yeah, he's like, yo, but yo, these other next guy who was about to get his money taken, he said, "Yo, don't play. They're all together." And he was like, "Yeah, motherfucker, you don't." No, this is when he went against HBO for trying to syndicate and to rebroadcast the Dave Chappelle show.
That's when he said he punched the girl in the pee in talking
Yeah,
about the
exactly,
pimp,
exactly, exactly.
talking about
But
the
that
pimp
same one, that
game.
same one,
Yeah,
yeah, that same one.
it's
He
the
said,
same
"Yeah,
same
don't,
stand up.
yeah, don't get in the way a man way in the man of making feeding his family, making his money. And so the thing is, I think that the Europeans or the West, the colonizers, created they created a want, a need. You know what I'm saying? Oh, look at these braces, these fat son. Just give me 2 lives, give me 50 lives. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to worry about them. They're your prisoners anyway, because a lot of these a lot of the African slave trade was conducted by Africans. I hate to say it, but the okay was given to them by African tribe leaders. So what would have, what I'm saying, what would have given them the propensity to say, okay, take these 50 people, take these 100 people, because they saw something more valuable that was, commercialized or advertised, and they saw in their slaves, which were usually um, prisoners from the other tribes, where they said, I really don't need them, and they're actually bogging up my system. So take them, you know what I'm saying? And they're doing that
Mhm.
today, even today. And I think that if the African countries, a lot of African countries, even Western countries, even the stands, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, all these stands, from the ex Soviet bloc, if they band together and say, you know what, we have our worth. Our worth might be this, this, and this. We suck at this, this, and this. We can. That's where true globalization comes in. Rich. You know what? I don't have any type of meat to raise to raise or to graze. I don't have the land. You have the land. Okay, but I have all of the like ores that you like, right? I recognize my value. You recognize your value. That's exchange. You know what I'm
But
saying?
don't you
And what
think that's
happens?
like promoting like a little bit of a socialistic principles in a world economy?
Well, I think that and this is something, actually, to be honest with you, I talked to some of my students about this actually today. Actually, I really, and don't get me wrong, but if we think about socialism, fascism, Nazism, communism, all types of government on paper, them shits are solid on paper. You know what I'm saying? It's when our mankind puts their hands on these different policies where things become more. tainted, and some of them become more tainted than other things. And I think that, yeah, socialism or communism, I don't really think it's such a bad thing. Like I don't like I said before, I don't think that or being isolated. I don't think this is such a bad thing, given the situation. And I think that if socialism creates jobs, creates a community, creates well-being and good health and education for that populace, right? And not being and without, without shading other countries, shading other nations, shading other communities. Why not? You know what I'm saying? So I mean, I think that
So, but
we label things.
but we probably need like a system of checks and balances, a
Obviously,
balance
yeah,
of
like
capitalism with
exactly,
socialism
exactly.
to kind of keep each other in check. Kind of like what the United States, in theory, that's what the founding fathers kind of like theorized, even though they had slaves, but
Yeah,
which was free
yeah,
labor.
but they,
But
yeah, but that was their
that was
time though
pretty
too.
much
You know, what I'm saying?
that was pretty much
I
the
don't fault them too much.
ideal of America.
Yeah, I don't fault them too much on that. All right, I'm not saying it was a good thing, but I just think it was very difficult that, saying that even a Thomas Jefferson or George Washington could have had as much sway if they had been against slaves before that period. You know what I'm saying? So you
Mhm.
have to live with the system that you live in. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not saying that it was a good thing at all. Trust me. But yeah, but like you said, yeah, you have to live with, saying what you're working with. And but again, like I said, I return back to one of the main ideas before. If we talk about socialism or communism or fascism or I don't know what's it called, isolatism. I don't know, when you're being isolated, nationalism, things like this. These are all good ideas on paper, but the most important thing is that you create and you provide opportunities. Which, like I said, probably the best situation would be everything mixed together. Um, and and again, I think that Richard, and I hate to sound like, super philosophical here, but I think that if we found life on another planet, like in some other star system, I think that would kind of actually make us feel more in tune with each other. And I think that's what we're lacking, what I'm saying? Because as time has evolved, we're constantly trying to find, instead of trying to find similarities with each other, we've always, like I said, it's good to be unique, right? But it's bad when you have to, when you want to try, when you have to inside internally want to be unique. And I think that humanity has been trying to be unique for so long that we've created classes. We created, you know what? I'm going to build my fortune on your back, like the IMF, like these big countries. And then later, I'm going to say, you need me though. You know what I'm saying? So I can still create this classism, but now we have you, not only that, but I have you in check now. You know what I'm saying? So, and I think that's the problem. I think that, we need some kind of event which pulls us together and say, you know what? We are different. Everyone is different. All 8 billion of us are different. But all 8 billion of us, like you talked about last week, are 98% the same genetically.